Thank you, Ron. Whoops. Sorry. Okay.
She thought I wasn't paying attention.
Now my screen is being, oh, here we go. Steve Day, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Okay, everyone place your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think my slides went away. Okay, we'll try this again.
There it is.
It's acting up today for some reason.
The Russians.
And Tom Barron, if you would please share the thought for the day with us.
Certainly, Nancy. Thank you. This week, as you all know, we are entering the holiest days of the year for both Christians and Jews. Although most people look at these faiths separately, let me remind you of the commonality of both. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, are accepted as the word of God by both faiths. In the Torah, God selected the Jews as the chosen people, bringing monotheism to the world. God saved the Jews by sending them to Egypt to avoid starvation, but then they were held in bondage as slaves for 400 years. God rescued them as Moses delivered them from Egypt. When Israel was told to take the blood of the sacrificial lamb and sprinkle it on the lintels and doorposts to have the final plague called the angel of death or the firstborn pass over their homes. This was a watershed event and immediately created Yom Kippur, a day of atonement during the Passover. This connects directly with Christians when in the New Testament, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, our Passover lamb, has to be sacrificed on Good Friday, the Day of Atonement, because his blood covers our sins, and the belief, when received in faith, delivers us from the bondage of sin. So by God's protection of the Jews and through his grace, both faiths recognize the day of repentance, prayer, and charity, and that is tomorrow. Thank you.
It's lovely. Thank you, Tom. Okay, I apologize. I'm having some technical challenges here. Let's try this again.
Okay, so I have to make one quick correction. That was very nice, Tom. But the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year in the Jewish holiday, you know, it's different every year because the Jewish calendar is different, but it's in September. The days of Awe, A-W-E, are 10 days, starting, you know, there's Rosh Hashanah and then ending with Yom Kippur. So that's our Day of Atonement. And that's our holiest day. Passover is a very important holiday, happens to be my favorite holiday, but it is not the holiest day of our year.
Oh, good to know.
Ludi.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Lynn, I looked that up, and there's at least the information I read on that was that some people say it is and some people say it's not Yom Kippur. The Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of that new year, is a question. So anyway, but that's very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, now my system, oh, here we go. Ed Gold, if you would please lead us in the song for the day.
Abba Nagila.
I'm going to ask the Rogos to find me a home on the range. And I'm going to wear this hat, but I'm going to sing Home on the Range. Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam and the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play,
It's
Where
pretty good at this
seldom
one.
is heard a discouraging word, and the deer and the antelope play. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Ed. Does that mean you're moving to Texas, Montana, or Wyoming?
They're very compelling after looking at my state income tax this year. I'm telling you,
Yes, I think you'll have a lot of company in the not too distant future. So now we would like to welcome visitors. I see Simran Sango on. Simran, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. I haven't been here in a while. Nice to see all of your faces
Nice to
again.
see you.
So my name is Simran, and I am the secretary for UCLA's Rotaract Club. So happy to be here.
Great, we're happy to have you. Thank you. And I have regrets from our Assistant Governor, Michael Lushing, who had planned to be here, and then got a message from him just before the meeting started about him on his way to a meeting, I think he said in Westchester, to organize a group of Rotary clubs that would be inviting John Kerry to speak. I have no idea when or what that event is, but if there is further news, we will certainly share that. Now, a few announcements. Marcia Hunt would like to share a video with us. Marcia?
Can you take your screen down and I'll put mine
Yes.
on? Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
And as you know, I am the Peace Chair for our Rotary Club and in the Rotary Action Group for Peace. And we are going to be this Saturday, it'll be 9 o'clock in the morning for Los Angeles, for the West Coast, all of the West Coast, in fact, and 9 o'clock in the morning, it'll be 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Wales, which is where this is coming from. And it's a peace concert to support Ukraine. And I have a little 1-minute video here I'd like to show you.
My goodness. Marcia, what time is that California? Oh, here we are. That's 1700 London time. So what time? That's
9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning for LA.
okay.
We were trying to do it so, that time seemed to be best. So it wasn't at midnight or 3 in the morning in other areas. And if possible, I don't know if, I've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings with a lot of people. And there's a gentleman named Dirk Luskin that's a friend of mine and a lot of the people in the Rotary Action Group for Peace. And he actually lives in Kyiv, Ukraine. And he's under 60 and got handed a rifle and can't leave. He's in the Rotary Action Group for Peace. And he is going to try to come in on it. We've gotten several messages to him, and he's sent messages back. I've gotten WhatsApps and a couple of texts from him, and he's going to try to make it and come on for a few minutes from Kyiv, Ukraine. And he's a wonderful gentleman. I think all the men, he says, that are over 60 are all trying to get kids and people out of Ukraine and all.
Sure.
Just everybody in the country is doing something. And anyway, and you'll be able to donate money to the special Rotary fund that's been set up for Ukraine. And on the on the Zoom, they'll have a spot where you can, donate if you want to. And then, for a fact, I get things every single day in the email. And I don't know if they're going to Ukraine or going to some podcaster in Iowa, or whatever. And so this, it's going to the Ukraine through Rotary, and for medical supplies, for food, for all kinds of things like that. So that is my announcement, and I'll put in the chat. It's just a real simple Zoom logon, and there's no password or anything. I'll put the logon in the chat, so you can either take a screenshot or write it down, so you have it for Saturday morning. Okay, I'll do that right now.
And Marcia, do you know whether there will be a replay in case people aren't available at 9 o'clock?
Yeah, I think this is a one. I'm not 100% sure they're going to be able to record it.
Okay.
Some of the people are coming in from all over the world, and some of them are live and some of them are pre-recorded, but a lot of them are live productions. So I think they're going to try. I'm not in charge of the technical at all, and we've got a different technical team than what we had last time, thank goodness. And so I'm not 100% sure with the technical, but we can try to record it. I can request that we record it. I'm sure they've thought of that. But as far as I know, it's a one-time thing.
Marcia, do they have the link?
I'm going to put it up on the in the chat. Okay, it's just you just go to your Zoom and put in, join, and it'll be, the number is 533-632-6427, and I'll put that in the chat right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, thank you so much, Nancy.
Of course, thank you. Now my slides went to sleep, I think. So let me let me try pulling them up again. Let's see, from current slide, let's go. I don't know why my system is being finicky today. John, would you take a moment to explain how the schedule will change a bit for next week's meeting because of our speakers' time constraints?
Yes, I will. Next week's meeting, and it's been on the calendar for about at least a month now. We're going to have a personal trainer from UCLA speak, who's on her on course to get a master's in physical therapy in a year or so. And she has a constraint in that she has to leave at 1 p.m. next week. Her name is Anna Zwanarek, and she's going to tell us, and we're going to start doing this at 12:30. So be prepared to start this part of the meeting, the program, so to speak, at 12:30, and her program will take about a half hour. She's going to tell us how to stay fit as you age, which will include a little bit of, standing behind your seat and maybe stretching a little bit. And then she'll talk quite a bit also and follow with questions. But anyway, we're going to start the meeting at the program at 12:30, and we won't be eating until 1 o'clock, and then we'll have our regular meeting then. So that's what it's going to be like next Thursday, which is the 21st of April. I think you'll find this very helpful and very enjoyable. She's very good at this in this field.
Good, thank you, John.
Is it a Zoom meeting next week?
No, it's a live meeting. I'm sorry, it's a live meeting.
And the Luskin's been notified that the lunch setup won't be necessary until 1 o'clock.
Yes. So can you do that, Tom, or should I do that?
I have done it.
Oh, you've done it. Thank you, Tom.
You're on top of things, as always. Are there any more club announcements that anybody would like to make before we move on? We have a few district announcements.
I think Simran, do you want to talk about what's going on in Calabasas this weekend?
I believe it's actually,
or the next weekend. I'm sorry.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah. So Operation Gratitude. Marcia talked a little bit about it, and I believe we've announced it before, but Rotaract is going to be volunteering at Operation Gratitude, and all of you are welcome to attend if you'd like. So it's going to be April 23rd, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And We will be assembling care packages, paracord bracelets, and then writing letters to veterans to show our appreciation. So if anyone would like to participate, I could add you to the email and then send you the information to sign up.
Great. That sounds like an excellent idea. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we have a few district announcements. The humanitarian trip to Puerto Rico is coming up on April 18th. Then we have the RILA retreat on April 29th to May 1st. As everybody knows, we're in the midst of the pageant of the arts. And Phil, do you want to add anything? I thought I saw Phil. I may have been mistaken. So the judging is going on right now. The students who are entering the competitions are sending out videos to several members of the club. If anybody else would like to judge and receive the videos, we can forward those to you. And then the registrations for the finals are due by April 23rd, so not too far away. Pardon me. As everybody knows, the district conference is next month, May 12th to May 15th at Lake Arrowhead. The deadline for making a hotel reservation is April 21st. And they're also working right now on district transportation options. There is a survey that has just gone out asking for people's preferences. So whether they'd be talking about carpooling or busing or both, I don't know yet. But if somebody would like to express their preferences and hasn't received the survey, please feel free to let me know and I'll forward the email to you. Are there any other comments about what's going on in the district at the moment? Okay. And with no further ado, John, would you like to introduce our beloved guest speakers? I think he's on mute. John, you're on mute.
I don't know if they need any introduction at all. We know them all very well, and we're very impressed with them in their
Absolutely.
Rotary and in their field. So I don't want to take any more time before from the jewels of wisdom that we're going to receive today from Mark and Lynn Rogo. Please.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to give the introduction, and I'm going to talk a little bit, and then Lynn's going to talk a little bit more about some of the pitfalls of real estate. Most of you, I mean, you all know me, but not many of you are, you all know Lynn, but I've been given a lot of credit for all of this, and it's not true. Lynn is really the brains behind the operation. Okay. And what I want to give you first, I want to give you an overview. So I'm going to share my screen here. I want to give you an overview of what has happened, and which is why you haven't seen a whole lot of me here recently. Can you see this spreadsheet here on the screen?
Yes.
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 All right.
Yes.
You know, I chose, you know, certain communities in West LA, and you can see moving, you know, in blue is a year ending April 2020, and then orange is year ending April 21, and then gray is year ending April 22 as of last night. You can see the trends on all of these areas. In every area, the volume of transactions, okay, has gone up. Some more than others. Cheviot is the only exception, but there has been a surge in real estate transactions that is unlike anything we've ever seen since 2012. And that is for several reasons. First of all, mostly people are trying to beat the interest rate hikes that are going on. If they had anything to do in real estate, now's the time. Those interest rates have a much broader effect overall on the feasibility, the financial feasibility of a property, more so than the price of the property. So these rate hikes have had a dramatic effect. Also, I think that people just feel better coming out of the pandemic to make a decision, a big decision in life about like real estate. So, so for those reasons, Lynn and I haven't had a day off in 5 or 6 months, and it's been round the clock. It's a surge going on, and for all real estate agents on the upper end. Except I have to say, I was told the other day, 20 million and above, they have seen a real flattening, and they're not going anywhere.
We don't ever sell those, so that's okay.
Yeah. So my wife warned me that I'm going to give you just this spreadsheet, that I'm not going to bore you with dollar per square foot and listing price versus selling price and all the other data. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Okay. So I've been doing this for 20 years. Mark joined me. Why is it so dark again? I have to go here with you. So I've been doing this for 20 years. Mark joined me 2 years into it. So it's been a journey, and there have only been 3 times during our whole career that so much is going on. 2007, just before the stock market crash, 2012, which was the year the government told everybody they could give their children, I don't know if it was just $1 million that they could transfer.
Unlimited.
You could give your children unlimited money. So everybody was transferring their property into their children's or grandchildren's name. So, and now, and as Mark says, it's being driven by a lot of different things. A lot of people, you know, you mentioned the state property tax, the state income taxes. A lot of people are moving out of state just because of that state income tax situation. And because people can work from home now, that encourages them to move to where it's cheaper to live and they don't have to pay as many taxes. So a lot of people are moving for that reason. That's okay. We have enough people here, let them go. You know, remember every year when the Rose Bowl was a sunny day, you know, another 100,000 people would decide to move here. So our population is huge, and we can afford to lose some people. But so you would think you would have more sellers than buyers because those people are leaving, but it isn't true. We have a huge sellers market right now. There are lots and lots of buyers, and there's so little inventory that when a property pops up on the market, it's like a fish bowl with a lot of fish in it, and you just put a little fish food in and they all go, ah, you know, that's what's going on. Now, the lower priced properties, it's worse. We had to put an offer in on a property for some clients in Pasadena that was 825,000, and there were 22 offers on that, and it went about 300,000 over asking. The more expensive the property, the fewer multiple offers you get. In a normal market, you never get multiple offers on a condo. And we have been getting multiple offers on some condos. And condos, as a rule, you know, we sell all kinds of condos, but we sell a lot of the high-end condos on Wilshire Boulevard in the buildings with homeowners dues that are in excess of $2,000 a month. And those, something fell down. And those, traditionally, it can take easily 4 to 8 months to sell one of those because there's a limited number of people who are willing to pay that much money in homeowners dues. But right now, they're going out as fast as they come in. In the last 6 months, pretty much every condo, except one that I put on the market, we've had it in escrow within 2 weeks, which is, wow, unbelievable. There just isn't enough inventory. And I think that's coming from so many people during the pandemic were afraid to move because older people are the ones usually moving to the condos, and they were afraid to do anything. So now that they feel it's safe, now they're all saying, okay, now I got to get out of this house. Let's move to a condo. I think that's what's playing into that. Now, as we all know, the interest rates have gone up a little bit, and they're supposed to go up at least 4 more times this year. So we think that by the end of this year that things are going to slow way down because the prices, it's going to be so much more expensive to get a loan. But we don't really know. Anybody who ever tells you that they know what's going to happen with the market is lying. none of us know. I thought that when this terrible war started, that people would stop buying, that it would be like the stock market crash, but it hasn't been. People are very busy buying up everything. 2 weeks ago, we put 2 units on the market in the same day, and 5 days later, they were both in escrow. Mark and I have 8 escrows right now. We never have 8 escrows. We're like getting confused as to what needs to be done and which one where. It's a very crazy time. So if you want to sell something, now is the time. But you have to remember that if you sell something, if you sell something, you have to immediately pay capital gains taxes. I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. Check with your accountant and attorney. But I do know a little something that it used to be, first time Mark and I moved in 79, you could defer the gain if you were buying something more expensive with a house, kind of like you do with a 1031 exchange, but that ended before 1989. So if you sell a house for $5 million and you paid $1 million for it, the very first thing you're going to be doing is paying capital gains tax on the gain. And I could tell you how to calculate it, but I'm going to let your accountant tell you how to calculate it, because Mark will get mad at me if I tell you. So, but I do know how to calculate it. Contact me later. So also, as we know, there's been a change regarding property taxes in that Proposition 19 last year. And honestly, it's very complicated. So I advise you to talk to your accountant/attorney about that. It used to be quite simple. If you were over 55 and you were moving and you sold your property and bought something for less, you just take your property taxes from the old property to the new property. Now, the good part of Proposition 19 is we know now you could take it 3 times, but
It's limited to $1 million of value.
But it's limited in numbers. It's very complicated. So before you do anything thinking you're going to have this great, wonderful deal, please talk to your accountant and have them calculate for you exactly what you're going to get when you do this. So that has sort of complicated the thing. People are still very busy with the 1031 exchanges. As a matter of fact, right now, there's so little available for 1031 exchanges that people are going crazy and they're having to buy properties that they don't really want to buy, but they don't want to have to pay the capital gains tax, which you can still avoid when you're doing 1031 exchange. If you have more questions about 1031 exchanges, Mark is an expert on that. You can talk to him.
You don't avoid your taxes, you just defer them.
Right. But you can defer them forever and leave the problem to your children. Anyway, this Proposition 19 definitely changed things. So another thing I like to tell people that they don't always understand, if the market isn't good, let's say it was, things were selling for lower. So right now, a $1 million property, let's say you could easily sell it for 1.3. But let's say at another time, that $1 million property, you could only get 700,000 or 800,000 for it. And people say, well, I want to wait till it's worth more. The truth is, now listen to this, this is going to sound strange to you. As long as you're buying another property, you're better off selling it when the market is low. Okay. Now you're going to say, well, why is that? That sounds crazy. But it actually isn't. If it's the last sale, if somebody's passed away and it's the last time that property is being sold and you're not buying something else, yes, you'll take a hit and it's sad that you did that. But on the other hand, if you're going to buy another property, here's what happens. First of all, you're selling it when the value is lower, which means your capital gains tax will be lower. You'll be paying less tax, right? And assuming you're not over 55, so that moving your property taxes doesn't help you anyway, the new property that you're buying will also cost less. In other words, you're getting less for the one property, but you're paying less for the other property. And your new property tax base is based upon the purchase price of the new property. So you realize you're paying less in taxes, and your new property taxes will be lower. So you can see that it's actually better to trade properties when the market is low. And you need to check. I'm pretty sure that you can move property taxes and bases anywhere in California now. It used to be only certain counties, but again, check with your accountant about such things. But that is something that nobody ever wants to recognize. They say, why wouldn't I want my house to be worth the most possible? Well, that's why. What else did Mark want me to talk about? So right now, and I actually have talked to some of you about this, if your kids want to buy a property and their budget is $1 million, they need to be looking at things that are no more than 850,000, preferably 800,000, because you have to count on that there will be multiple offers. And so that you need to have some wiggle room. If they're looking at properties that cost $1 million and they only have $1 million, in California, we're sort of jaded about prices, and they only have $1 million to spend, they're going to be disappointed. We constantly get calls from parents whose kids have used sort of their friend agent and they've lost in multiple offers 5 or 6 times already. So obviously we'd be happy to help, but I do win about 90% of the time in multiple offers. But there are lots of good agents, and well, not lots, but some. And you have to get somebody who knows what they're doing, because it's not rocket science. There's a way to be the winner. And but you have to have a really good agent to be taking care of you in this sort of multiple offer situation time. I still believe, now see.
Let me add to that.
Okay.
If you're budgeting for your children, okay, or your children are budgeting, they need to understand that it's that they need to set money aside for expenses and so forth, just for the process. But they also need to set aside money that they're going to put back into the house, no matter what you're buying, unless it's brand new construction. Your kids, or you, or anybody for that matter, need to budget a certain amount of money to make changes and things that need to be done. So it's not just about the price of the house. It's really about what's spent in afterwards. Kind of important. And I have to say that it's very rare for us to see anybody in our client base at 40 years or younger. We don't see the footprint or the fingerprints of the bank of dad or the bank of grandpa in there somewhere. So very standard.
Unless they're in tech or finance, then they have lots of money. But otherwise, they do need help, because they need help with the down payment. They might have big salaries, but they haven't saved that kind of money. I still believe, even in this market, I think you have to be very careful in what you buy or what your kids buy. In this market, because there's so little inventory, people will buy properties behind the high rise, property on a major street, property across the street from a school, property a block from a freeway. People will buy anything right now. We're going to have to sell a property on the 2nd floor of Latour, a major high rise facing Wilshire. Normally, you could never sell the 2nd floor facing Wilshire, but I'm not planning on having any problem, because again, there's no inventory. Don't fall into that trap, because if you buy those things, what do you think is going to happen when it becomes a buyer's market? Then then there's lots of inventory, and a buyer has a choice to buy anything they want. And guess what? They don't want anything behind the high rise. They don't want anything next to the freeway. They don't want anything on a major street. So, and not across the street from a school either. So you have to really, don't be tempted by the fact that you could get this property and it's a lower price. If you're getting a deal, there's a reason for it, because the only deals right now in real estate is that you get the property, right? And I always tell people, it's so interesting to me.
She has allergies.
What?
I wonder if you have allergies.
I do. Terrible. It's making, but I took my Zyrtec, but I'm still suffering, Eleanor. And again, we live on Wilshire Boulevard, so it doesn't help with the dust. So what was I saying? I was saying, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so don't be trapped into buying one of those properties that you'll never be able to sell. You know, for instance, Mark and I, our first house was on Lynbrook, right behind a high rise, the Wilshire Regent. And we actually exchanged properties, but our next door neighbor, because it was a bad market, for like 5 years, she couldn't sell the property. She couldn't give it away because nobody wanted to buy the house behind the high rise. She had to wait until it was a seller's market again and there wasn't any inventory, and then she was able to sell it. So it's important to be aware of that. So if your child or you or anybody is looking to buy something, you're going to be asked for, with the offer, verification of funds and a lender's letter. So it kind of goes together like a puzzle, right? If I'm asking $1 million for a house, I want to know you have the money to pay for it. So if you have a lender's letter that says they're going to give you $700,000 and you show me your bank accounts that have $300,000, that's going to add up to $1 million. And that's what you need as a total verification of funds, right? And it doesn't have, you don't have to show them the actual money you're giving them. You cannot show them money that's in an IRA, right? But you will need this, and it's best to get all this ready before you get started, because if you go out the first day and see something you want and you don't have all your ducks in a row, your agent will not be able to get an accepted offer for you because you need to have these things. Also, I have to warn you, the lending situation now is not great. It's very, ever since 2008, when the mortgage crisis happened, lending is very difficult. And those of us who are older, if we are not working, it's really next to impossible to get a loan. And truthfully, what they want people who get a paycheck. Nancy works for a bank. She gets a paycheck from a bank. They're going to love to loan her money. Mark and I are independent contractors. They don't love to loan us money. They will, but they don't love it. And they put us through, and you have to show 3 years of this and that and the other thing, right? But if you are retired, you're not working at all, and you say you feel very embarrassed because let's say you have, I don't know, let's say you have $4 million in the bank and you only want to borrow $1 million, and you say only, right? Only. And you say, don't you see I have $4 million in the bank? Why won't you loan me this money? They don't care. They want to see your paycheck. They want to see that you're earning money now. It's very upsetting when it happens. So it's like I'm warning everybody about that. There are hard money lenders who will loan money. What other suggestions do you have?
There's limited, that's not true. There are limited lenders that will make a loan based on verified funds. If you have rental income, if you have royalties, movie rights, literature rights, and so forth, they'll want to see a stream of income and verify it. But they take that into the pricing, and Nancy could really speak to this better than we can. And you might find yourself priced a little bit higher than somebody who's just getting a regular paycheck. We had a client here who owns a huge building down by the airport, tremendous income spitting it off. That's part of his retirement, along with his pension from his law firm and so forth. We had one hell of a time getting him settled into Latour on the lending side because of the lack of a steady paycheck that can be relied on. And to me, that's ridiculous. Anybody who works for a paycheck can get fired anytime. But if you're getting money off rents or you're getting pension money, that's a hell of a lot more reliable.
Yeah, Mark, I want to ask you, is a pension just as good as a paycheck?
I think so, but we're finding out in the market, the underwriters don't think so. You remember all these underwriters, sorry, Nancy, I don't mean to crash on your underwriters, but all these little underwriters are these little piece of shit 20-year-olds. They think that they know everything, and they don't know anything about pensions or investment income or stock dividends and so forth. So they look upon that as something lower than, and which I think is baloney. Let me tell you, if Phil, if you were applying for a loan and I was the underwriter, I would have more faith in your quarterly dividends from General Motors or Apple than I would on your paycheck. But they don't count things that way.
Yeah, Mark, let me just weigh in on this.
Sure.
I had a client that had $1.3 million in a loan and came up with some money from the family, brought the first trustee down to 260,000. And they still ran us over the coals on how long it took to get it approved. And I kept on saying to myself, I don't get it. We just went from 1.3 down to 260, and we're trying to get a new first trustee. And we ended up succeeding at 2.25 back in December. But I am telling you, I was shaking my head the entire time. The client was self-employed, had more income on an annual basis, and still, I was wondering if it was ever going to close.
Chris, your story is a very common story that we always hear. I don't get it. I don't understand the underwriting process. It isn't the brokers. It isn't the lenders. It's those little POS 22-year-olds, okay, that are in some office somewhere that don't get it, and they're doing the underwriting. So they're going to come back. You got to all be prepared for this. They're going to come back and they're going to ask you for everything except for your underwear size and how many suits you have. It's unbelievable what these people ask for.
Well, what happens? You go through the initial underwriting process and you think you're just fine, right? And then they start coming back with more. They say, well, we really want to see that. They'll tell you 5 days before you're supposed to close. We know you're getting a bonus. We want you to get paid that bonus before we'll fund your loan. We want to see that. It's terrible. And the buyers feel so demoralized, and it's so embarrassing for them. It's just awful. And it happens to everyone.
Everybody.
We see it over and over again.
Oh, and by the way, where did that money go? Who owns that account? Is that a front for Al-Qaeda? Is it registered in the Bahamas? It's unbelievable what they ask.
They want to know where you got all that money.
Yeah.
If it's a gift from your parents, they want to see all that. Then they need a letter from your parents that they're really giving you
Irrevocable.
that gift, and it has to go into your account at a certain time. It really is extremely, like I said, it's demoralizing and embarrassing. And clients will say, why is this happening to me? Maybe I shouldn't get a loan. And I say, this happens to everybody. It's hard. So you have to be prepared for that if you or your child wants to get a loan. Mark wanted me to talk about the difference between condos and houses. So if you're moving into a condominium, you have to ask a lot more questions than if you're moving into a house, because homeowners associations are involved. And you will get during the escrow period what they call CC&Rs and standing rules and minutes and the bylaws. And you have to have somebody read through them who knows what it is they're looking at. It says, oh, you can't have a pet that's more than 25 pounds, but you have a pet that's 60 pounds. Well, but they're not going to let you. So you need to know all the things in the homeowners. You need to know what reserves the building has. So does this building you want to move into, do they only have 60,000 in reserves? That's not a good thing. Each building is supposed to have a 30-year plan that tells them what things are going to come up, when they're going to need to change an elevator, when they're going to need to change a water tank, different things. So they know what expenses. And small buildings, 24 units or less, those buildings tend to not want to, the only way they get more money in reserves, right, is if the monthly dues are higher, and then they put that money into reserves, and that's what should be done. But a lot of people in smaller buildings say, I don't want to pay more than $500 or $600 a month. I don't want to put the money in reserves. What if I move out in 4 years? Then what am I paying for? Why am I paying for that? If there's something that has to be done, if it needs a new roof, then we can all be assessed and pay it at the time. So that's a situation with smaller buildings. The bigger high rises, that have 90 to 140 units, they all have good management and they're very strict, and they have to have really good reserves. Our building right now has $4 million in reserves, to give you an idea. But the building that we're selling, this little building right next to Cedars that has 6 units in the building, what are their reserves, like 20,000?
$30,000.
$30,000. So they want to redo some elevators. No, they're having it tented for termites, which cost 10,000 and the security is 3,000. It's 13,000. So the 13,000 has to be split among the 6 homeowners. And so they're all having to pay their share.
$125 a month for 12 months.
So people will say, why are the homeowners dues so high? Why do I have to do that? Well, none of these are money-making propositions because the people in the building own their own units. So there's nobody that's getting money. Whatever it costs to run a building is divided by the number of units there are. And many buildings.
No, that's not right.
Wait a minute, let me just finish. Don't interrupt me because then I forget what I'm saying. So many buildings, including ours, the units that have higher square footage will pay a higher percentage than the units that have a lower square footage. One of the buildings, the Wilshire, actually makes them all pay the same thing, and it's really terrible. But it's not a per square foot thing because it doesn't work that way. It's like everybody uses the elevator. If there's a pool, everybody uses the pool and the gym and all the other amenities. So, it's not usually on a per square footage. It's just a smaller amount than the others pay, but it
Hey,
all
Lynn.
has to add up.
Let me ask you a
Yes.
question. Do the banks look at two things? One, do they look at the reserves the building has? And do they look at how many renters are in the building?
Yes, now you brought up a very interesting point, Phil, so we'll get to that now then. The bank has always cared how many people are renting in a building. They either only want to see up to 10 or up to 15% of the units being rented out because renters do not take the same care as owners do, right? But here's the problem with that. There was another law, was that part of Proposition 19 or another law?
I don't remember.
That the state of California is short on housing. And so they want housing created wherever it can be. They're allowing these ADUs to be built where they never were before.
In garages, you'll give up your requirement to have a garage if you'll turn it into an ADU.
Or I remember they used to have rules that, the inspectors would come and check if you were putting in a bathroom, it could only have 2 things. It could have a toilet and a shower, but no sink, or only 2 things. Now they want you to go ahead and do all that. Well, so what they've done is they've changed the rental rules. So no building can say to the people that own there, you can't rent your unit, or you have to own it. All the high rises and units in Century City, they all had rules that you had to own your unit 1, 2, or 3 years before you could rent it. And they did that. They don't want investors to buy the units to begin with and just start renting them out. But guess what? They're legally not allowed to do that anymore. None of them advertise it, right? But all of the building managers know it. We all know it, that if somebody wants to buy a unit as an investment from the get-go and start renting it out, they can. So Phil, theoretically, you could end up with a building that's half rented out, right? Which is.
You're on mute, Phil.
And the other part of the question is there's some loans that require you to live in the house for 2 years. The banks don't seem to be enforcing those. So a lot of people are turning theirs into STRs. Do banks really care if you stay there for 2 years before you rent it, or the banks just want their money?
No, the banks look upon your primary domicile, your primary residence, as what you're going to give up last. So how they rate you in terms of risk for your home versus getting a loan, let's say for an investment property, are 2 different things.
No, but what I'm saying is some people are claiming that's going to be their home, their permanent home, but they never even move in. They just turn an STR right away. Do the banks even check that?
I know they're doing that to get the lower interest rate. Okay. But if the bank ever did check, the bank could, if you look at the loan documents, the bank could go backwards and ask you for the interest differential for that whole period of time. Okay, on most loans. Again, Nancy knows better. Nancy, and I say Nancy, we have 2 Nancys now. Nancy McCready knows more about that than we do. But that whole loan document package is very tight. Banks have no appetite today for any defaults at all for any reason. That's why the old saying, you can't get you can't get a loan unless you don't need it, you know.
By the way, I don't know more than you. I'm actually not a banker. I'm a financial planner and investment advisor.
Oh,
So,
that's true.
She's not a
That's
mortgage
true.
so this is actually extremely educational for me, and I thank you.
So another thing that's been happening in the state of California and Northern California for a while, because the competition has been so terrible, and it's driven by, you know, all the tech people in the Silicon Valley. They have, and the financial people, and a lot of those people live in San Francisco as well. So all the way in the Bay Area, people have so much cash, so much money that, you know, these houses pop up and there's so many people who want to buy them. So they've started this whole new thing. What happens is the seller, they go ahead and have their own house inspected and all the different inspections. So when you first come to an open house and you say, I want to buy this, they hand you or email you 200 pages. It's everything you normally would get in an escrow. You get the inspection reports that were the seller's choosing. You get the title report, you get the seller's disclosures, the natural hazard disclosure, you get preliminary title, everything, right? And on that, just looking at that, you have to decide if you want to buy it non-contingent. Usually the three main contingencies are the inspection contingency, the appraisal contingency, and the loan contingency, right? Well, you have to be willing to go in non-contingent. So they don't take backup offers. There's no reason, because once you're in, right? You can't get out. It's a very scary, frightening thing. They redid the California Association of Realtors purchase documents now to say that if you go ahead and do that non-contingent, it's against your broker's advice. But that's what they do up there. Our kids had to do that.
There's going to be a lawsuit about this someday, okay? That this buyer was never given the opportunity to have their own independent inspector come in and verify things. Somewhere along the line, some inspector is going to overlook a gas pipe. It's going to blow up, kill the family, or worse. And then there's the estate's going to sue that former seller and saying, you never gave the buyers, now the owners, the opportunity for their own independent inspection.
Well,
It's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
I think maybe, I'm not sure, but I think maybe you can go in then and do inspections, but you have no contingency for it. So if you found things, you said, I don't want this house with all these things wrong, you could get out, but you would lose your 3% deposit, which is a lot of money. So it's not a great
Our
thing.
kids had to go into a transaction in Los Altos based on that. And it, you know, it had Lynn and I very, very nervous. Fortunately, it's worked out just fine, but
you understand. Let me explain to you what an appraisal contingency does, because I'm guessing most of you don't really understand it. So let's say I want to buy a house for $1 million and I want to put down 20%. That's sort of the most common. So I'm asking the bank to loan me 80%, which is $800,000. So if the appraiser comes in and they look at like properties that have sold in the last 3 months, they don't care what happened 2 years ago. It has to be within the last 3 months. And they want to see if it appraises. Now, if they say I'm appraising it, it's not worth $1 million. It's only worth $900,000. Now, in that case, the bank is only going to loan you 80% of $900,000. And if you still want to buy it, you have to come up with the extra cash. That's the reason the appraisal contingency is so important and why we encourage our buyers not to give that up. But we're seeing more and more here in Los Angeles because of the tight market and so little inventory. People will put in multiple offers and the seller will reply, we don't want you to have an appraisal contingency. We don't want you to have a loan contingency. And buyers are so excited. They say, okay, we'll go in without all of that. So again, what will happen if it doesn't appraise and they don't have the extra money to put in, or the loan doesn't, they can't get the loan product they want. And they say, we can't do this. Well, then they're going to lose their deposit, which is normally 3% of the purchase price.
And 3% here is a lot different than 3% in Biloxi, Mississippi, or Butte, Montana. There's a lot of money involved.
On $1 million, you're talking about 30,000, right? So on a $3 million house, You're talking about 90,000, right? So that's why that's a big deal. So if you as a parent are watching
It's
your
a big
children
deal to
do
most
this,
of us. Not a big deal to Bill Rowan, but it's a big deal to the rest of us.
right? Try to encourage your kids, you know, that to show you the contracts and don't let your kids go in non-contingent. It is not a good idea. Yeah, John, you wanted to have a question?
You're on
You're
mute.
on mute.
You're still muted, John. There you go.
Okay, you haven't mentioned this yet, but how much house flipping is going on now? And if there's a lot of it, is that a danger for the market?
You know, at this particular moment, I haven't seen a lot of it actually. But I will tell you, I'm not a risk taker personally. I always find that dangerous because you can this is a great market. Right now, this would be a great market to flip a house if you could get one cheap enough, which you can't. But if you did get one cheap enough and you got it ready to go, what would happen if suddenly the market wasn't hot? Then you would lose money. But I will tell you, it's very strange in real estate. One night, everybody will go to sleep and it will come to them. I don't want to buy real estate, and the market will be dead. Just like one night, something passes over and everybody says, I want to buy real estate. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen, but I've seen it over and over. I don't know how everybody knows they should stop buying, but it all seems to happen at the same time.
And that's why the name of
Hey,
the
Lynn,
holiday
can I ask you
is
a
called
question?
Passover. What?
Lynn, and maybe we could probably speak this directly, but in the Holmby Westwood where I live, north of Wilshire, there's at least 4 or 5 rentals and only a couple for sale. Is rentals seem to be a thing a lot of people are doing now, or is that just it's just a coincidence that they have more rentals available than
It's just a
actual
coincidence.
sales?
It's just a coincidence. You know, if they want to keep their property because they say it's valuable and it's more valuable to me. But for instance, we just talked to somebody and they were of renting it out for a couple of years and then they could 1031 exchange it, but they could only get $7,500 a month for it. And it costs them $9,500 a month to own it. So there really is no point in renting it out. Yes, Michael?
Well, there's the other big reason for that is a lot of the people in our neighborhood north of Wilshireville spent somewhere between 100 to 200,000 for their homes 50 years ago or 40 years ago, and now they're in their 80s or 90s. And if they sell, the capital gains tax is going to be so tremendous. If one of them dies due to community property laws, they get an entire new basis at the first step. So they're going to rent that house even with both parents in assisted living until one of them dies.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Mark and Lynn, this has been a tremendous amount of information that you've shared with everybody. And it's been very enlightening. I have this one question that sticks in my mind over and over and over again with the amount of baby boomers who are in their 70s and some in their 80s. When are they going to move and when are they going to start selling?
Oh, they're doing it now.
Yeah.
That's what's driving, you know, usually people call when they fell down, they hear the reasons they move. They fell down and broke a hip. They had knee surgery. They really can't take the stairs anymore in their 2-story house. They have live-in help and the help is leaving. They've had them for years and they don't stop it. And
It's Allie, not me.
Oh, I know. So, and they don't want to worry about getting help anymore. So if they're in the building, they won't need all that help. They're tired of taking care of the garden and the pool and everything else. Right now, people are feeling it's not safe out there anymore. There's a lot of robberies. And, you know, somebody who lives over on Kelton, they were broken into twice recently. So now we have them in escrow on something in the Blair house that they're afraid. And then another big reason, if somebody dies and they're alone in the house, they don't want to be alone in the big house. So they want to do it. Sometimes one of them is sick and they say, you know what, let's move together because I don't want to leave you alone in the house. I know I'm not going to live that much longer. There's, you know, we've had several people move in where one of the people had Parkinson's or something, and then they both moved in and one passed away. So these are the major reasons why people decide it's time to move into a building. And it's happening big time. And we're baby boomers and we're 68.
You know, Chris, there were a lot of stories in the Wall Street Journal that the millennials, okay, weren't interested in buying houses. Their whole big thing is experiences. Their experiences. They poo-poo their parents. In fact, my kids didn't even know what a mortgage burning ceremony was. Okay, but that's changed in the last 5 years. Now the millennials are in the market. They want to own homes. And so we've seen a big uptick in the level of their interest. I want to add one other thing, what Lynn said, what Michael had brought up here, or Phil, one or the other, a few minutes ago. There's a lot of 1031 money chasing all of these properties. They're no longer just looking for apartments. They'll take a high-rise condo with its high HOA dues, anything except
Paying the taxes.
paying the capital gains tax, you know.
I feel like we're overstaying our welcome. It's 1:31. If anybody wants to stay and ask another couple questions, great, but I don't want to, you know, wear out our welcome here.
Yeah.
And we're always happy to take any calls from any of you anyway.
Yeah, I've been thinking about having you two speak for a long time, and I'm sorry we didn't do it sooner, because it's been a wonderful talk. Thank you very much.
And thank you guys. That was a great talk. I really appreciate all the info.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can't hear you.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. And you've actually taught me several things that were very timely. For everyone else, we will be back at the Luskin Center next week. As John mentioned, our timing will change a little bit, but it will be great to see you all in person again. Have a wonderful weekend. If you observe Easter, happy Easter, and have a good and safe week. And I'll look forward to seeing you face to face next Thursday. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for Mark and
Yes, thank you both
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.